In today's episode of Earth's Changing Climate, we're going to examine the question of scientific agreement about human-caused climate change. Hello, I'm Robert Davies with the Utah Climate Center, and here at the Climate Center we're often asked just how much agreement is there among scientists about climate change. We're often told that something like 97% of climate scientists concur. Specifically, that climate is changing, that humans are driving this change, and that this change poses significant risks for people. You may have heard that this is scientific knowledge. And you may have heard that there is a strong scientific consensus about these conclusions. Really? Well, how do we know there is such agreement? I mean, how might one go about assessing the level of scientific agreement? It's a good question, and the answer is to approach this question like, well, scientists, which is to say, let's make some measurements. And to gain extra confidence in the results, let's make the measurements in several different ways. We can ask scientists directly, that is, poll them. We can ask the world's scientific societies, or look for evidence of agreement among the societies, such as written statements. Or we could also just examine the peer-reviewed scientific literature itself to see what the published science says. And this is probably the most accurate way to do it, since it is from the literature that scientific consensus arises. So let's begin by looking at what scientists themselves are saying. And this has been done in a number of formal studies. The first, a study by Peter Dorn and colleagues, asked a variety of people if they thought human activity was significant in changing mean global temperature. Among the general population, they found over 50% did think humans were playing a significant role. But from scientists, they found considerably more agreement. And in particular, the most relevant group, actively publishing climate scientists, they found 97.3% agreement. So these results are from among a sample size of over 3,000 participants. Yet another study to look at the opinions of scientists is the Vision Prize project, which specifically seeks out active climate scientists each year to get their views on different questions. In 2012, participant climate scientists were asked what influence human activity has had on raising global temperatures over the past 250 years. A strong majority said humans are the primary cause of the warming. Only a very few said humans are just a minor cause, and interestingly, none said humans have no impact or that global temperatures aren't rising. This study had a sample size of 171 active climate scientists. Finally, yet another formal study by Bill Anderegg and colleagues at Stanford, published in the Proceedings of the National Academies, took a somewhat different track, not asking scientists directly, but looking at the existing public statements of more than 1,300 active climate researchers. In doing so, they found 98% of them concurred that human activity is changing Earth's climate. Well, that's what scientists are saying when asked, but what about whole scientific societies? Such societies come in different flavors. For example, the National and Royal Academies of Science, comprising the world's most distinguished scientists. One example is the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, with 2,200 members, nearly 200 of whom have won Nobel Prizes. There are also scientific societies for different scientific areas, such as physics, chemistry, and meteorology. The American Geophysical Union, for example, comprises the community of Earth researchers. Together, these organizations represent tens of thousands of scientists. And there are other societies as well, such as the American Association for the Advancement of Science, one of the world's most prestigious scientific organizations. What we find is that all of the world's relevant scientific organizations, from national academies, to earth sciences, to general sciences, to biological and health sciences, have issued explicit statements concurring that human-caused climate change is happening. It presents large risks to humans. There are no scientific societies who have issued dissenting statements. There have also been formal studies examining the scientific literature on climate change. That is, research published in peer-reviewed science journals. The first such study was done by science historian Naomi Oreskes and colleagues at the University of San Diego. They examined more than 900 climate change articles from the science literature and found not a single one that rejected the premise of human-caused climate change. A similar study was conducted and published in 2013 by John Cook and Associates, expanding the Oreskes study. Cook and his colleagues examined nearly 12,000 climate change publications through the year 2012. They not only assessed the total numbers that agreed or disagreed with the premise of human-caused climate change, they assessed them by year to get a sense of the historical evolution of the scientific consensus. Additionally, they asked the authors themselves to assess their own articles as agreeing or disagreeing with the premise of human-caused climate change. It was an assessment of scientific opinion of enormous scope. And what they found was pretty compelling. Both Cook's assessments and the author assessments found strong agreement in the literature, converging on about 97% over the last decade or so, in good agreement with the previous Oreskes result. Finally, in another such assessment, though this one unpublished, James Powell examined nearly 14,000 peer-reviewed articles and found only 24 dissenting views, again, in solid agreement with the Oreskes and Cook results. So, we have used a variety of methods, each comprising independent measurements, to assess scientific opinion on climate change. The result is a collection of measurements consistent with each other, different witnesses telling essentially the same story, giving us more confidence in the result. But how does this very strong scientific consensus compare to the public's opinion about what scientists believe? John Cook conducted a semi-formal poll to ask just this question, to assess the public's opinion about scientific opinion. He found that a few people thought less than 5% of climate scientists agreed about human-caused climate change. A few more thought around 10% of the scientists agreed, a few more about 30%. But the largest single block of people felt about half of climate scientists agreed, and then the numbers go down from there. Of course, based on the actual measurements of agreement we just reviewed, the actual number is more like 95%. And so now we know there is a strong scientific consensus about the reality and danger of human-caused climate change, though the public doesn't yet fully understand that this is true. It is, as we say in science about a scientific consensus, scientific knowledge. This has been Robert Davies with the Utah Climate Center. Thanks for watching. We hope this has been helpful.